Meaning of Maestro is a master, so is this a master of IAMs? Hello and thank you for clicking on this video where I'll be sharing my experience of the Fatfreq Maestro SE. No, you did not hear me wrong. This is the name of the company and I'm always afraid someone will come up to me asking what am I listening to because I do not want the following scenario to ever happen. Hey man, what are you listening on? Fatfreq. What did you say? Say that again to my face. You asked me what I was listening on. So what are you listening on? Fatfreq. Anyway, there is a reason why there wasn't any unboxing experience videos because it just comes in this. No unboxing, no packaging, nothing to indicate that you've got the Maestro SE in there. If you're hoping to get Z1R level unboxing experience, boy are you in for a huge disappointment, especially when you're paying about the same price as the Z1R. Yes, this set will set you back $1,800 US. So hopefully as the company grows bigger, they could possibly do some packaging that just adds to that special experience to match what's inside, because what's inside, oh boy, it's something. Before we begin, quick disclaimer, I did receive this unit with a slight discount with the upgrade cable, but I still paid for this unit using my own money, and this will not have any influence as all thoughts and opinions are my own. But I'd like to thank Ben from Fatfreq for being extremely patient with all my queries. Thank you for an amazing customer experience. Now that's out of the way, let's talk about the accessories. It comes with essentially the same accessories as the Maestro Mini, which I'll talk about in a separate video. So it comes with this plastic hard case where you can put your name on it in case it gets lost, and a good Samaritan is kind enough to track you down and return it to you. Yep, I'm daydreaming. I wish Fatfreq would put their logo on this so it just makes it more identifiable because, as mentioned earlier, from the outside, there's nothing to indicate I bought the SE, or even from Fatfreq themselves. Inside the box, it has a little business greeting card, which is nice, a cleaning tool, a clip, additional silicone ear tips, one pair of foam ear tips, moisture absorbing beads, and what they call the musician earplugs, which is essentially a fancy earplugs. Let's talk about the cable. This is an upgrade cable that will set you back another $150, and the stock cable that it will supposedly come with would be similar as the Maestro Mini's cable, which is to say, it's not good. If you can't afford this cable, then the cheaper alternative would be the Let's Sure Z Reviews Chimera cable, but if you choose to go with this cable, let's see what you get. That blue is simply gorgeous. It just completes this IEM's look. This has a similar design to the new Hawk Pro cable, but at more than half the cost. It has a plastic sleeve feeling that goes around the cable. There's harder plastic hooks around the ears, but you can't see it because it blends with the rest of the cable's look. The cable termination again is similar, where all the terminations are at an angle and it screws in, but there isn't any groove to align, so you sort of have to look at it and align it so things don't go in the wrong hole. But once it's screwed in, even though it's still spinning, it's all tight and secure. It comes with the typical 2.5mm, 3.5mm and 4.4mm, and also an additional 3.5mm balanced termination, which is not what you typically get from other cable packages, which is great. This cable is slightly on the heavier side as everything contributes to its weight, and it does pull the IAMs downwards a little, so I always had the need to tuck this in my collar, which is why this pin is useful for, which they graciously provided. But everything mentioned above does make this cable feel very premium, and I feel it is a necessary complement to the Maestro SE. I feel Fatfreq should just include this cable as a standard stock cable for the Maestro SE and put the cost into the overall price while still offering a separate listing for this cable because it's really good. For the design, this IEM is thick with 3 C's. It is one chunky IEM. Just bringing the famous Monarch Mark II size-wise, I'd say they're about the same size, with the Maestro SE having more grooves and dents, but like the Maestro SE is a touch wider, but the Monarch has more depth. All in all, they're both really big IEMs. For the faceplate, if you already have the Maestro Mini, you kinda get a similar blue pattern, but it is still beautiful to look at. The biggest difference would be getting the M and SE initials on one plate, whereas you get the Fatfreq wording on the Mini, and on both the SE and the Mini, you get the Fatfreq logo on the other faceplate. Personally, I like the simplicity of the Maestro SE, just the logo in gold with the beautiful blue background. It's a beautiful looking IEM, but I'm probably biased because I like blue. For the fit and comfort, I'm not going to lie, this is a little big for me. I do feel a little sore mostly around this area after a few hours of listening. I know this nozzle was extended in hopes that your ear doesn't have contact with the chunky portion of the IEM, but because of how deep this thing needs to be in my ear, I still feel that stretch and pressure from the size. I will put this in the same category as the Monarch Mark II for fit and comfort, although I do have to say the Maestro SE fits slightly better in my ear than the Mark II. To put things in perspective, I have to be on small ear tips just to accommodate this IEM in my ear, which is important as it affects the sound. More on that later. Ear tips. I rarely have a separate section for ear tips, but I feel this IEM needs it, as the stock ear tips makes the bass on this IEM too overwhelming and overpowering, to the point where it envelops the rest of the sound. But I went with either the SpinFit W1 on small size or the Moondrop spring tips in the medium. And it not only gave me a proper seal and a slightly deeper insertion, but it actually brought the mids and treble forward a little, so it stands toe to toe with the amount of bass. So I would go either way, and that's the sound I'll be sharing in this video. The bass. This IEM officially has the deepest sub bass, period. If the variations is the sub bass king, this is the sub bass overlord. And it's not because of what the graph suggests, as I'll talk about that in the Maestro mini review, but it's something within the tuning with the driver technology that they use that somehow manages to make the sub bass and the bass the feature. Music that has a hint of sub bass in it, you now can hear it. Most of my library is accompanied by either a rumble or a growl. This is satisfying my bass needs on so many levels. The closest experience I can relate to the sound of the bass on this IEM is like a live concert experience. If you've attended one, you know how it feels when the bass comes through the speakers. It's strong, it's impactful, prominent, and you feel it, but it's never boomy or uncontrolled in its presentation. Imagine everything I've described for the IER Z1R, but if you watch my video on that IEM, I said that I wished it had more rumble on that IEM. It's here on the Maestro SE, and I absolutely love it. It rumbles deep, it growls in your tracks. The mid bass is solid and impactful, it's weighty, it's full, it's deep and textured, and I feel like I'm exaggerating here, but that's what it feels with the bass on the Maestro SE. If you call yourself a bass head, you owe it to yourself to at least listen to this IEM. This, just like the IER Z1R, is special. Okay, one more thing before we talk about mid-range. The Batmobile chase scene from the Batman, that moment where he starts his car, I've been trying to find that feeling I had watching this in the cinema. The Maestro SE captured that. Spine-chilling. For the mid-range, this is one of Fatfreq's best feature, having the ability to have this much bass in their IEMs without bleeding into the mids. The mid-range is not too forward or recessed, yet it still stands strong in the same plane as the bass. It still has the same issues as the Z1R, as the background music is as prominent as the vocals, but unlike the Z1R, the vocals has a bit more presence and is a little more forward in its presentation, so you still get that prominence in the vocals with all the details from the background music. But when there's a lot of background music, sometimes the vocals do lose its spotlight in some tracks. So if vocal presence and prominence is a huge factor in your sound preference, then I would say that this isn't this IEM's strongest feature. For the treble, it is perfect for my ears. It is smooth for me, yet it's on the right frequencies where, for example, trumpets sounds open and clear, but females' vocals don't pierce my ears like the Z1R does. So for me, it's not harsh or sibilant, but it's enough to make the highs clear, and it managed to cut through all that bass. However, maybe I got too used to the HE1000 V2s and the IER Z1R that I felt the treble was lacking a little bit in air compared to the Z1R. It doesn't sound as open, and it doesn't have what some people may refer as the sparkle or zing, which is fine with me, but I can imagine this not satisfying treble heads. There is one thing to note about the detail, and the bass and treble may have had a slight impact on this category, but even though there are details that you can pick up from the track, but don't expect extreme clarity on those details. Don't get me wrong, this IEM was still able to pick up a lot of details, but if you are comparing this with other IEMs in the same price, the details sounded a touch on the softer side. It's there, but it's not like super clear, which is understandable with this amount of bass. If anything, the fact that you're still getting this much detail despite having this amount of bass without getting enveloped is an achievement in itself. However, the imaging and separation of different sounds on these IEMs is quite spectacular. Taking for example listening to Hazy Shade of Winter by Gerard Way featuring Ray Toro, I can distinctly hear the electric guitars on the left side of my ear, the hi-hat cymbals on the right side, the drums dead center. It's so well separated that I actually thought the drivers on my right sides were dead at first. Then I tested it on other tracks and it was right back at center. The imaging is a joy to experience. Other song recommendation that blew me away with this IEM, Locked Out of Heaven by Bruno Mars. For source, unfortunately this IEM does require quite a bit of power compared to other IEMs. On the 4.4mm balanced termination, I'm on the 11 o'clock dial on my EF400, which is just short of the requirement of my HE1000V2s, which is a full-size planar magnetic headphone. On my Moondrop Dawn, I'm on 35 out of 100 on my computer audio level, when other IEMs would typically require around 15 only. But using the 3.5mm jack on my ROG 5S phone, I'm surprisingly getting a pretty loud volume with 10% to spare, which I guess that says a lot about the phone itself. Just to sum it all up, all the nitpicks I described above was me trying really hard to find some faults to this IEM, because in all honesty, I love how the Maestro SE sounds. I just can't stop coming back to this IEM for a session. Every time I start a just one song listen, it turns into a 10-song minimum session. And that's because of how amazing of an experience the Maestro SE brings to your music. And it just makes you want to try other music with this IEM because of how special it is. At least that was my experience. Sure, it's not perfect, no IEMs are. It doesn't have the widest soundstage or the most resolving in its detail, but what you get is a bass experience unlike any other that does not compromise on your mid-range and treble, and its imaging capabilities are just breathtaking. It's so unique and it ticked a lot of what I want in my preferred sound. It's simply one of my, if not the best IEM in my collection. And it is an experience that I cannot deny. Now I'm just curious how Fatfreq is going to top this, because with the Maestro SE, they've set the bar really high, at least in my opinion. With that all said, that concludes my experience with the Fatfreq's Maestro SE. Did you have a chance to listen to this at your recent audio event? Share with me your thoughts and experience in the comment section down below. I'm curious to know your experience. Once again, I'd like to thank Fatfreq for their patience and amazing customer support, and I'd like to thank all of you for tuning into this video. If you enjoyed the video, do consider hitting that like and subscribe button. That will help the channel grow and I truly appreciate your support. Until the next experience, take care and happy listening.